You know that feeling, right? You're just endlessly scrolling, you can't seem to focus, and your hand is always reaching for your phone. Well, what if I told you the solution isn't some new productivity app? What if it's the one thing we all try to run away from? Boredom. Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, so let's just jump right in with a pretty radical idea. And honestly, this might completely change how you think about your phone, your work, maybe even yourself. And I'm not exaggerating here. There was a study, you can find it in Psychology Today, where researchers found some people would literally rather give themselves electric shocks than just be left alone with their own thoughts. I know, that sounds totally extreme, right? But it makes you wonder, what is going on inside our heads during those quiet moments that makes us so desperate to escape?
Well, researchers from the University of Limerick have an idea. They think that at its core, boredom is really a quest for meaning. Think about it. It's this uncomfortable signal, right? It's your brain telling you, hey, what we're doing right now, it doesn't feel very purposeful. And that feeling is what pushes us to go find something that does feel significant.
So, when you feel bored, it's not like your brain just switches off. Not at all. It's more like it tunes into a different channel. And this channel is incredibly important. This is actually when a really fascinating part of your brain gets to take center stage.
Yep, scientists have a name for it, the default mode network, or DMN for short. The easiest way to think about it, it's like your brain's internal storyteller. It's the system that just kicks into gear whenever you're not focused on something out in the world. You know, when you're daydreaming or thinking back on a memory or just letting your mind wander.
And this is where the real magic happens. Your DMN is constantly working behind the scenes, building your very sense of self. It's the thing that connects your past, your present, and your future into one coherent story. It's what helps you understand and empathize with other people. It's how you plan for your future. So this isn't just random background noise in your head. No way. This is the source of our creativity. It's where our personal story gets written.
Okay, so if our brains are doing all this incredibly important work when we're just idle, then why? Why do we instinctively reach for our phones to shut it all down? What are we running from? Well, the answer comes down to one very powerful chemical that's always pulling our attention away. And yeah, we're talking about dopamine, but hold on, because it's probably not in the way you've heard before. See, there's a huge misunderstanding about what dopamine actually does. And once you get it, it changes everything. So we've all heard it called the pleasure chemical, right? But neuroscientists will tell you that's not quite right. It's actually the molecule of more. It's not about feeling good after you do something. It's about the wanting, the anticipation, the motivation before you do it. It's the chemical that whispers, hey, just one more scroll. Just check one more notification. Just one more cookie. And here's the problem. Our modern world is like a fire hose of these dopamine triggers. It just never stops. And this constant overstimulation, it puts us on this treadmill where we're always just chasing the next little hit. It's a vicious cycle, right? It leads to procrastination, you can't focus, and you're just left feeling kind of unsatisfied all the time. And that makes it almost impossible to focus on the things that actually matter. So what happens is, when our brains get so used to these constant, high dopamine hits, from social media, video games, junk food, you name it, that quiet, meaningful work of our default mode network, it starts to feel just intolerably dull. Our brains literally get rewired to expect these intense, immediate rewards. And that makes it so much harder to sit down and do the deeper, more fulfilling stuff. So, the big question is, how do we break out of this cycle? And this is where it gets a little counterintuitive. The solution isn't to find better distractions. It's to do the exact opposite. We have to learn to embrace the quiet. We have to intentionally retrain our brains. Now, you might have heard of things like dopamine fasting, and that's kind of the idea, but a more practical way to think about it is just intentionally exposing yourself to boredom. The whole point is to lower your brain's baseline for stimulation. If you do that, suddenly those less intense, quieter activities start to feel enjoyable and engaging again. Psychology Today actually talks about a method that's a lot like exposure therapy for this. You can systematically train your brain to just tolerate being understimulated. And you start small, right? Maybe you try folding laundry without music or a podcast on. And then you gradually work your way up to bigger challenges like trying to study in complete silence. Okay, so what does this actually look like in real life? Once you start building up that tolerance for boredom, you can then use some really specific techniques to harness that new focus and channel it into deep, meaningful work.
Okay, structured work blocks are an absolute game changer here. You've probably heard of the Pomodoro technique with its short 25-minute sprints. That's perfect for training your focus muscle. Then, as you get stronger, you can move on to longer, 90-minute deep work sessions. The key here is the rhythm. Those structured breaks, they stop you from burning out, and they teach your brain that focus is a valuable and finite resource.
And you know, sometimes the best focus tools are the simplest ones. I love this story from a law student on Reddit. They said they used their sleeping 11-pound dog on their lap as a physical anchor to stay put and study. I mean, you can't just get up and move a snoozing dog, right? It's just a fantastic, simple, and kind of gentle way to create a barrier to distraction.
Look, the big takeaway here is that building focus isn't really about willpower. It's about building a system. So what does that mean? It means you have to treat your focus time like an important appointment in your calendar, one you just can't miss. It means you have to actively control your environment to cut down on distractions. And this is crucial. It means taking real breaks. Step away from all your screens. Go for a walk, stare out a window, whatever. Let your brain actually recharge, not just switch to a different kind of distraction.
Because in the end, this is about so much more than just productivity or getting things done. It's about reconnecting with your own internal world. You know, that place inside you where your creativity, your memories, your very sense of who you are, that's where it all lives. So the real question isn't what you'll accomplish. It's what will you find if you finally stop running from the quiet.